Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today is one that I'm actually really excited about. Something that I have really been wanting to do for the last probably 2 years specifically, is to search out and find kind of unknown, or at least unknown to me, historical romance authors. So if you're new here, I love historical romance. I've read a vast amount of it. It's my favorite romantic subgenre to read. And I've read almost all of the big heavy hitters. Now, there are some, I feel like there are big heavy hitter historical romance authors that most people have heard of and read, like Lisa Kleypas, Tessa Dare, Lorraine Heath, Beverly Jenkins, like that type of category, right? And then I feel like there are some that are still well known, but maybe aren't as widely read. Some of those are even authors that I haven't got to, like Sophie Jordan, Meredith Duran, you know, like that, right? So I feel like we have those type of tiers. And then I feel like there's another level of historical romance authors that are kind of not talked about, at least on my corner of the internet and my social media and bookish friends, right? So I'm not saying nobody has talked about these at all. I'm definitely not saying that. But these are authors that I specifically went to go and find. And with the exception of one or two, or maybe even three. I think there are 3 authors on this list that I had heard of before I went searching for this video. So 3 authors on this list are authors that I know of. Only one of them is an author that I have read before, but it was not a historical romance. It was like a historical romance / mystery. So we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, my gist is these are authors that I feel like I don't hear people talking about a lot, and maybe that is my fault. In any case, these are under the radar, underrated historical romance authors that have now moved to the top of my TBR as soon as possible to get to these books specifically, but also just these authors' works in general. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one that I want to talk about is actually one that I have heard when I was doing my research. Like anytime that I saw a lot of like rave reviews or sort of like key phrases and words that are kind of like buzzwords for me, like emotional connection, you know, deeply romantic, a lot of great tension, things like that. Like that's kind of what I was looking for. Beautiful writing, really like sort of deep and profound. Maybe even I found a couple like that. I'll have to try and remember which ones they were. This one came up that people just seem to love, and it is Unmasking Miss Appleby. This is book 1 in the Baleful Godmother series by Emily Larkin. So this series sounds like it is so fun because there is a fairy godmother in each book, and she sort of grants the wish of our heroine to hopefully find success and happiness in her future. So this one says, on her 25th birthday, Charlotte Appleby receives an unusual gift from the fairy godmother she never knew she had: the ability to change shape. She's penniless, she's orphaned, she goes to London to try and make her fortune as a man. So she's shapeshifted into a man. However, a position as secretary to Lord Cosgrove proves unexpectedly challenging. Someone is trying to destroy Cosgrove, and his life is increasingly in jeopardy. As Charlotte plunges into London's back streets at Cosgrove's side, hunting his persecutor, she finds herself fighting for her life and falling in love. So that one sounds like it's got a pretty strong background plot too, which I think is going to be really fun and add a lot of readability to this book. So I'm very excited. I think the premise is very unique, and this one came with pretty high remarks from people online, and this one has on Goodreads, I'm going to tell you like if I have them, the Goodreads ratings and over an average rating. So this one has 3,900 ratings and 3.99 average review. So that's pretty good, honestly, I feel like, for that amount. Okay, so now this next one is one that came up. This author, I believe, only has a few books out. And what was said about this is like deeply romantic and beautifully written. So I'm very excited about this. This one is Abigail by Jess Heileman. So this one has 1,092 ratings on Goodreads with a 4.34 average rating, which is quite high. So this one says, secrets are meant to be kept, especially when the truth will change everything. Since the death of her mother, Abigail Blakesley has lost any desire to become a debutante and enter society. But now, foregoing her first season, has brought an unwanted invitation to join her aunt and cousins for a summer at Timpton House, the large estate of the Stanton family. Reluctantly accepting she's thrust into the vexing world of social propriety and matchmaking that she had hoped to avoid this whole time. More vexing still is her cousin's suitor, the young Timpton heir, Edwin Stanton. Moody and distant at times, remarkably endearing at others, Edwin seems a puzzle she can never solve, but can never quite put away. But then Abigail has her own secret to hide, her own mystery to conceal. Perhaps such puzzles are better left unsolved, or perhaps love can find a solution. So this one says, beautiful coming-of-age story, romantic tension, and this one is a sweet, clean romance, so no steam there. Okay, now, I think that one sounds really great and really fun with a pretty interesting plot, and honestly, the plot itself of that one, like if I were to just read the blurb, I wouldn't really be that interested in it, but it was what people were saying who had read it, either on blogs or in reviews, or really, really talking about how beautiful this author's writing was, so I'm very excited about that one. Okay, so now this next one is an old one that I am actually really excited about. It is The Outsider by Penelope Williamson. This one was published in 1996. It has 1,941 ratings on Goodreads, and the average star rating is 3.97. This one has a very short blurb. It just says, after Rachel Yoder's husband is murdered by outlaws in an act of outrageous greed, she must raise her 10-year-old son alone on the Montana plains. One day, a handsome stranger dying from a gunshot wound walks into her ranch. With simple kindness, she treats his injury and nurses him back to health. Soon, Rachel finds herself drawn to this mysterious outsider with a violent past and must put her future on the line for a last chance at happiness. So, I think that sounds great. I love that whole setup. And I think that the late 90s is really like a hidden gem of great historical romances that I feel like I personally haven't, other than the heavy hitters that I mentioned earlier, I really don't feel like I've explored that time period enough, so I'm excited about that one. Okay, so now this next one has a really beautiful cover, and this is one of the authors that I have heard of because I believe she does collaborations with Heidi Kimball, who is another sweet, clean romance author that I really, really love. This one is called The Jewels of Halstead Manor. This is book 1 in her Ladies of Devon series. This is by Kasey Stockton. So this blurb is kind of a little bit longer. I'm going to just kind of summarize it instead of reading it like I did with the other one. So she gets an invitation to go to her uncle's remote estate in Devon. She can only stay there as long as this invalid needs her there. He ends up trying to keep her there because he's falling in love with her, and it's not her uncle, by the way. So she goes there to Devon. She ends up there because she is in desperate need of a benefactor. But then she finds out that her uncle never actually sent her any invitation to come, and he doesn't want her there either. So she feels like she's kind of forced in a corner trying to get him to let her stay because she has nowhere else to go. And then we have our hero, who's Nicholas, who has just inherited an earldom. He will be inheriting an earldom. He is her uncle's heir. He doesn't really want to do this at all, but it says, one day, the aged lord arrives on Nicholas's doorstep and says, hey, you're next in line for the title. Nicholas willingly goes to Halstead Manor to learn the role, but someone isn't pleased with the heir. Somebody mysterious. And after a gunshot wound in the arm, Nicholas must discover who is out to get him. So that is who Julia ends up taking care of, is Nicholas, the heir. She literally stumbles over this fallen man on the lane to Halstead, and that's where she ends up staying as this injured man's nurse, and that's the romance. So I think it sounds good. I think it sounds like the plot could get a little convoluted, or maybe it was just the way that the blurb, like this blurb is long and it doesn't really tell you exactly what's happening like right away, you know what I mean? And that worries me only because I feel like that is probably a reflection of the author's writing, and I don't particularly like books like that, but I still want to give this a try. This author has a lot of titles under her belt, and again, like I said, like absolutely beautiful cover, and we'll see how that one goes. So, okay, this next one has been on my TBR for a long time, and I just have never gotten to it. It is on KU, actually, or it was at one time. I'm not entirely sure if it is or not anymore. It is Behind the Light of Golowduyn. This is Cornish Romance number 1 by Deborah M. Hathoway. So this one has a rating, has 1,200 ratings on Goodreads with an average 4.28, which again, I feel like that's really high. So she is the keeper of the lighthouse in this town. He is the captain who's shipwrecked on her shore, and a marriage of convenience is something that's going to save her home. but there are secrets, of course. So basically, she's going to do anything that she can to make sure that this lighthouse stays up and running, and even if she has to do it alone, a shipwreck happens while on her watch, and brings a dashing captain who is keen to offer his aid at every turn. So pretty soon her days of isolation vanish. So I think that this sounds really excellent, actually. It says Captain Gavin Kendricks didn't expect to end his naval career by crashing his ship against the rugged cliffs of Cornwall. When he's pulled from the sea by the fearless and quick-tempered Miss Moore, a tentative friendship begins to form, and then he realizes what has been missing from his life, a beautiful lady to fall in love with. Before either of them can explore these newfound stirrings, death and deception hit Golowduyn, and Abigail is left with a choice. Either she loses everything she has ever loved, or she marries the captain and accepts his help. Unable to give up the lighthouse, she agrees to the union, and they work together to see that the light does not diminish. But when her childhood secrets are unearthed and their property falls victim to troubling defacement, their marriage threatens to crumble. So, Gavin fights to gain her confidence. Only Abigail can forget the crippling memories of her past to trust Gavin with Golowduyn and her heart. So that one sounds like a pretty complicated plot, pretty unique. I've never read a romance with a lighthouse watcher heroine. I love a shipwrecked hero, so I'm very interested in that one as well. Okay, so now this one looks like it is more of a traditionally published historical romance. This was published in 2009. It is To Wed a Wicked Earl by Olivia Parker. So that cover, if it's the one that I'm looking at that I could find online, it looks like a historical romance that we've all known and loved, right? Like, this is sort of giving me this My Sweet Lullaby, or The Sweet Lullaby, the Lorraine Heath cover, if you know what I'm talking about. That one, not the one with the baby rattle, the other one with the couple. So this says, he is on the hunt for a bride. Adam Fairmond, Earl of Rothbury, needs to find a wife immediately, or his beloved grandmother will leave him penniless. Can't have that. Adam is an unrepentant rake. He would reform for only one woman, the woman he's lusted over and loved for years. It's rather unfortunate, then, that Miss Charlotte Green would never consent to be the blushing bride of a rogue, or so he thinks. Charlotte believes that the Earl, the only man whose touch leaves her trembling, would never want a woman like her. Weary of her wallflower ways, Charlotte decides that a friendship with the Earl just might give her the excitement she desires. Keeping their true feelings hidden, she and Adam plan a sham ceremony to placate the dowager. But when the marriage of convenience takes an unexpected turn, will Charlotte and her wicked Earl finally reveal their irresistible, unforgettable love and delight in a lifetime of passion? That sounds fun and unique, and it sounds like that hero has been pining after her for years, which I freaking love that. I love that so much. That's one of my favorite things. Yes, pine for the heroine. Pine, pine, pine. Okay, so now we have another Western one, and this one I believe is a Christian romance, but that doesn't bother me. So when I read this, I'll let you know like how heavy that theme is, because I know that can be off-putting for some people. But this is a Western romance. It has come highly recommended. This one has 2,300 ratings on Goodreads with an average star rating of 4.13. It is Borrowed Light by Carla Kelly. So this one says, Julia Darling never expected to cook for some cowboys in Wyoming. But when she breaks off her engagement in Salt Lake City, it's the perfect opportunity for her to escape. Determined to stick the job out, Julia faces her biggest challenge yet, letting go of Borrowed Light to find her own witness. Set in the early 1900s, this is one romantic adventure you'll never forget. So this one came so highly recommended. This author, people really, really loved her. They said that she does really a lot of emotional work. It sounds like we didn't really get a setup for what the romance is going to be, so this definitely sounds like this has more of a spiritual focus, so I'm not sure if that's going to work for everybody. I'm going to try it out because I like that, actually. Like, I don't mind that at all, as long as it feels like integral and natural to the plot. I don't want to be preached at in any form at all, you know, so I'm just mentioning that because I know that's going to be a stumbling block for some people. So I'm still very intrigued with that because people said that one was deeply emotional. So all right, let's see. The next one is More or Less a Countess. So this is actually an author that I have read before, and I have her book right here. This is the book. I bought this before my surgery I had a few years ago, and I didn't end up reading it because I was just reading on my Kindle and watching TV, but I have it. So this, Anna Bradley wrote a book that I read a few years ago, and it was a mystery romance, historical romance, and I liked it a lot. I think she had a lot of potential as an author. And she is an author that will continuously like pop up in underrated historical romance authors. So I really want to try this series. This is the series that specifically gets mentioned. So this one has 1,015 ratings with a 3.99 average star rating. So it says, finding a worthy husband should be simple for 3 beautiful debutantes in Regency London, but the Somerset sisters have a way of making it delightfully complicated. So it sounds like each book covers one of the sisters. So Violet Somerset has always preferred a library to a ballroom, but to please her grandmother, she agreed to 1 London season. With nothing to show for it but heartbreak, she's reconciled to spinsterhood until a notorious rogue known as the Devil of Dare requests an introduction to her timid, gentle younger sister, Hyacinth. Violet will do anything to stop the match, even if it means posing as Hyacinth herself. So that's fun. Sounds like she is posing as the girl that he wants. Of course they're not going to fall in love. Nicholas Balfour, the Earl of Dare, is enjoying the life of a rake far too much to take a wife, but he must keep his promise to his grandmother. We read that in a few books before that, similar premise. He'll simply choose the meekest bride he can find, install her as estate, and then carry on as before. Hyacinth sounds perfect until he discovers that her sweet demeanor hides the tongue of a viper and the mind of a bluestocking. As Violet's ruse threatens to unravel, however, she may find the tables turned. Soon she may have no choice but to tolerate her handsome fiancé or fall in love with him. So that one sounds good. It sounds like it could go either way. This is book 2 in the series because I don't know why I went with book 2. It had higher ratings, I believe. I feel like sometimes in series the first book isn't always a great gauge of that author's writing ability. Book 2 usually is, so if you can read them out of order, if it's a new to me author, I'll usually skip the first book and go to the second one because I feel like they're still kind of working the kinks out in the first book, you know? So okay, so now this next one is also a book that I own. This was on my wish list for a long time, and my dear friend Jessin from Smart Women Reads Romance, or Jessin Reads Romance, she sent me this for my birthday, The Rose and the Thistle. So The Rose and the Thistle by Laura Frantz has 2,300 ratings with an average 4.17. This one says, in 1715, Lady Blythe, Headley's father, is declared an enemy of the British crown because of his Jacobite sympathies, forcing her to flee her home in northern England. So this is a Georgian set historical romance, which is unique in of itself. I feel like those are pretty rare. Secreted to the Tower of Wedderburn Castle in Scotland, Lady Blythe awaits who will ultimately be crowned king. But in a house with 7 sons and numerous servants, her presence soon becomes known. No sooner has Everard Hume lost his father, Lord Wedderburn, than Lady Headley arrives with the clothes on her back and her mistresses in tow. He has his own problems, a volatile brother with dangerous political leanings, an estate to manage, and a very young brother in need of comfort and direction in the wake of losing his father. It would be best for everyone if he could send this misfit heiress on her way as soon as possible. Drawn into a whirlwind of intrigue, shifting alliances, and ambitions, Lady Blythe must be careful whom she trusts. Her fortune, her future, and her life are at stake. Those who appear to be adversaries may turn out to be allies, and those who pretend friendship may be enemies. So this is a fairly new release. It came out in January 2023, and it does sound like the background plot in this is strong. Like, it sounds like that's maybe equal, at least, to the romance. So I'm hopeful that's a good one. All right, my friends, and the last book that I want to mention is actually another physical copy that I own. This beautiful edition was sent to me by a subscriber, by Paola Manucci. Thank you so much for sending me this. I'm going to put a picture up there because the sun is glaring off of this. But this is Sweet Disorder by Rose Lerner. This is the first book in Lively St. Lemiston series. So this sounds so good. And if you see the cover, this is a plus-size heroine. So I love that very much. So it says, prickly newspaperman's widow, Phoebe Sparks, has vowed never to marry again. Unfortunately, the election in Lively St. Lemiston is hotly contested, and the little town's charter gives Phoebe the right to make her husband a voter if she had one. Nicholas Diamond, his leg and self-confidence both shattered in the war, is determined to prove to his titled parents that he's not useless. He's got to help his little brother, obviously brother, win this election, and that means marrying Phoebe off to somebody before the polls open. So, I think that sounds very, very fun. This sounds like it's probably going to be like a bit of a modern historical romance, but I don't really care, you know? I mean, like, I feel like as long as the author does a good job of telling the story and getting me into the world and convinced that even if it feels modern and historical, like, I don't mind that as long as it feels like a realistic world, you know what I mean? I think the times that it bothers me when books feel too modern is if the author has tried to make it a set in a deep historical time period, not allowing for the modern type of influences. So it seems like it needs to be a solidly built world, similarly to like a fantasy would, right? So anyway, I think this one sounds great. There you have it. Those are 10 underrated historical romance authors, and a book from each of them that I am very interested in reading. I'd love to know if you have heard of these authors or if you have read any of them, and let me know which one you think I should read first as well. Thank you so much for being here and for making it to the end of the video. If you are this far in, please feel free to leave me a fall leaf, and I will see y'all in my next video.